Hey, welcome to video 4, which is mothering your inner child. And when I say inner child, I'm talking about the little girl that lives inside of you. And the dictionary defines inner child as a part of your personality that still reacts and feels like a child. And we all have a little child inside of us. And when you have traumatic experiences as a child, that residue is still left inside, right? And so that is what we've been talking a lot about as it relates to healing. And your inner child is the one who experienced that pain, okay? And so you have to go back and mother that part of you in order for your inner child to feel safe, to feel protected, to feel loved, to feel comforted, to feel understood, to not feel like she's all alone and like someone is out to hurt her. And so I'm going to give you some practical things that's listed in the guidebook that you can start to do as it relates to mothering your inner child. I will say that I wasn't in tune with my inner child until recently. I know she appeared a lot when I was in therapy. Certain conversations we would have and I would feel triggered. And then most recently when I was working with my coach, it just so happened to be my birthday and we were wrapping up our session. And as we were talking, she's like, well, is there anything else you want to say? And I was like, no, I'm good. And then out of nowhere, I say, she didn't even call me for my birthday. And I just started crying. Now, let me explain. My mother never calls me for any holiday, never my birthday. So the adult me totally understands that. The inner child in me, there are times when she still longs to have that relationship with her mother. And I was triggered and I started crying. And what I now know, when my inner child, and we'll call her little Siobhan, when she appears, the right side of my body starts to shake. I start to stutter a lot over my words and I'm not present at the moment. And this happened in therapy as well. So that's how I was able to kind of link the two and see how it correlated with one another. Because there will be times at therapy where we will be talking about something, obviously mother related, and it's almost like the adult me is no longer present and the inner child is there. So I'm real close, holding myself, my body is shaking. I try really hard to stop, I'll say, try to stop my leg from moving and it just keeps shaking uncontrollably. And I've had some really surreal experiences. And I now know that the reason that my body goes through these different motions is because my inner child needs to feel comforted. She needs to feel like she's safe. Many times I was not safe when I was a little girl. And so when I'm opening up and I'm talking about traumatic experiences that happened in my life, it's almost like I wake her up. And so I've been learning to kind of process through that and be mindful of what that feels like. So even on Mother's Day, I was triggered again. And this time, because I've been doing this inner work, I was aware of it. So instead of going into these, different spaces that I don't like to go in, I was able to reach out to my coach and say, hey, I had this experience. This is what I'm feeling. And we were able to kind of process it through. Or we were able to process through it, and it helped me so much because I'm now self-aware. And so what I'm learning is that I have to make sure that I'm letting little Siobhan know that she's loved, that I'm not going to put her in situations where someone is going to hurt her. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to make sure that she's safe. The things that happened in the past are not going to happen in the future because I'm healing and I'm growing. And not only am I healing and growing for myself, but I have this beautiful company, Be Free Project, where I get to help women along the way. And so this takes a lot of work. And so I have to continue to comfort myself in that way. And so everyone's situation or whatever will be different when it comes to your inner child. That is just some of the ways that I'm triggered and I'm paying attention to it so that I know what I need to do to kind of comfort myself. So I was looking at BetterHelp.com, and some of the common effects of hurt from the inner child that can cause destructive behavior is self-sabotage, self-defeating behavior, self-harming behavior, passive-aggressive behavior, and then violent behavior. And I want you to know that the hurt inner child, she is vulnerable, she is sensitive, she is emotional, and she just needs to be protected. So when you think about like the toxic patterns, that show up in your mother, that is what your inner child experienced. And even the adult you, there's an inner child inside of you, and she's experiencing that. So the pain, the hurt, if your mother is dismissive or emotionally unavailable or narcissistic or, enmeshed, like she's experiencing that. And the little girl in you just wants to feel safe. She just wants to play and have a good time and know that she's loved. And so when there's a lack, it's almost like it comes out sideways, if that makes any sense, or you're triggered like me. So I have to be mindful when I'm talking about, my mother issues, and making sure that I go back and I talk to the little girl in me. So I'm going to give you, before I go through like some of the things that you can do, I want to share another story with you that recently happened back in March. It was a week after my birthday. I was at an event, and earlier that day before I got to the event, because I've been doing this healing work, right? I had wrote a letter to my 15-year-old self, and I said, we're now safe. I'm protecting you. I have so many amazing, beautiful women in my space. I have this tribe, this community that loves on me so much. I'm married. We have beautiful children. Like, we have a really blissful life. And I just kind of spoke life and just kind of comforted the inner child in me. Later on that evening, I went to this event that I was invited to. And there was a question that came up. And everyone had little question cards at their table. And so I was discussing my question or whatever with my table. And then at the end, we were wrapping up, and the MC was like, does anyone else want to share their response from their question with the group? It was a big group. And so I shared a little bit. And then this lady at another table, she stood up and she said, my question says, what would you say to your 15-year-old self? Now, keep in mind, I had written a letter to my 15-year-old self earlier that day. And she goes on to, share what she would say. And then the MC was like, is there anyone else that would like to add on to that? I raised my hand and I say, I just have to say something. I said, earlier today, I wrote a letter to my 15-year-old self and really comforting her. And I told the young lady, I said, you may think that you wrote that card for you, or you read that card for you, but I said, you really read it for me. And I said, I have been able to heal and work on the inner child. And I wrote a letter to myself to comfort her. And so I thanked her for reading it. And I just knew in that very moment that that was for me, and to be able to share my story and my journey. And I'm going to share more of that in the next video about how I was able to change my narrative. I'll circle back to that story because it all ties together. And so as a child, you deserve the right to feel safe. You deserve to feel loved, and you deserve to be protected. When any of that doesn't happen between your parents, naturally you're going to have an emotional reaction to that. And sometimes it's not intentional how you respond to certain things, like those behaviors that I just mentioned. But because this stuff probably has been buried so long, some stuff is going to come up even while you're doing this work in the Motherless Child Guidebook. And that's why I want to continue to encourage you to pace yourself. Don't rush it. Allow whatever comes up to come up. And just kind of take your time working through this, because it's not easy work. Again, I've been doing this for several years, and I'm now getting to a place where I'm learning what my triggers are. I'm learning about the inner child and how she needs to be healed. I'm comforting her, right? I now understand like the toxic pattern that my mother had and how that impacted my life. And I'm able to be in tune with all of this, but it took a lot of work. And so I want to continue to encourage you. I don't want you to rush this. This is a lot to process as you work through everything. And so take some time and think about, as you were growing up, what is it that you needed? What did you feel like you needed from your mom, but you never received? Did you feel like you got the affection that you needed? Did you feel like an outcast from your family, like you were different from everyone else? Did you feel alone and misunderstood? Like, I really want you to go through the journal questions in the back and really kind of work through that. Now I want to kind of share a few things as it relates to how do you know you need to heal your inner child. So there's a long list in the Motherless Child Guidebook, and I'm not going to go through the long list because you have it, but I kind of want to read a few of them and kind of touch on them. One of them, the very first one, is you struggle with saying no. And I feel like many of us kind of struggle with being people pleasers and telling everyone yes, and yet we're constantly telling ourselves no because we don't want to deal with the internal stuff. You may not be conscious of that, but trust me, it is definitely tied to doing this healing inner work. You feel guilty for standing up for yourself. You struggle with expressing your emotions, so it's hard for you to say, how you really feel, because you don't know how to really communicate it, because you haven't tapped in to figure out, okay, well, how do I feel? And you may even feel embarrassed by your emotions, right? So it's better to say, oh, I'm good or I'm okay, when deep down inside you're really not. I told you in a previous video that for years I wore an invisible mask, and you would think by looking at me that I had it all together, but in actuality I did not. I was very unhappy and I was broken internally because I hadn't yet done the work that I'm sharing with you now. You don't have a strong sense of identity. You put others' needs before your own. You find it hard to trust people out of fear that you think that they're going to harm you. And this was me. Even so much so, even working with my coach. I remember in the very beginning of our sessions, I was sharing some personal stuff. And then afterwards, I was like, wait, what did we just tell her? Why did we say that? And I remember emailing her and I said, based on what I just shared with you, I feel very exposed. I'm afraid. And I just kind of let it out. And she sent back some very comforting words that made me feel like she was making space for me the same way that I'm making space for you. And slowly the wall, this invisible wall that I have up, slowly start to come down, and I was able to trust her more and more. And now I feel like she's one of my biggest cheerleaders, and even has been such a support system with getting this work out. And yeah, she's been such an amazing support system with getting this work out. I apologize, a call came through. I apologize for that. You find it hard to let things and people go, even if they are not good for you, right? So as I was telling you before, I sometimes hold on to people way longer than I should. And sometimes their behaviors they're not good for me. You blame others for what they've done, and you play the victim card. So I talked about that in a previous video. You constantly blame other people for your whatever is going on in your life versus taking ownership and healing and mothering that inner child inside of you. So if you can relate to anything that I listed, and the complete list is going to be in the guidebook, you definitely know that you need to work on healing your inner child. Some of the things that you can start to do is to definitely use the affirmations that I provided here for you and start to recite them. Speak kindly over yourself. Speak life over yourself. Love on yourself extra, extra hard. Even start to journal about what you're feeling internally. Look at yourself in the mirror and just speak life over yourself, like affirm the woman that you are. And you can also just sit quietly and just think about positive affirmations. And that's how you begin to shift your mindset. You begin to shift the way that you think, so that you can grow and, of course, be better. Some of the affirmations that I listed for you: let your inner child know that you're sorry for mistakes and failures that you've had in your life. Thank her, say, I forgive you. I believe in you. You're needed. You're special. You matter. Like, those are all positive statements that you can recite over and over again to feel better. Also, one of the things that you can start to do is to make time for play. So a friend encouraged me to do this recently. She said, what did little Siobhan like to do when she was, a young girl? And I love playing with Barbie dolls. I'll confess, I played with Barbie dolls till I was 15 years old. And then at that point I was like, oh, you got to give them away. Not playing with them now, but I loved imagining and dreaming and visualizing with my dolls. I loved reading magazines. I loved Little Debbie zebra cakes, so I recently bought some just to kind of, just for the nostalgia, right? And I love music. And so I've been creating some playlists from back in the 90s and the 2000s that I can listen to, that I used to vibe to back in the day. And so that is how I am playing with my inner child. I also love to color. So I have like coloring books and pretty markers and gel pens and all that jazz, so that I am creating space to allow my inner child to play. Okay, so think about, what did you love to do as a child? And start incorporating some of those things into your life. And it may seem silly, but it's not. It's how you are healing and taking care of yourself. And don't feel like you have to share it with anyone if you don't want to. But yeah, start to do some of those things that you enjoyed doing as a child and start to play. 2 more things is to be mindful of how you feel. When you're emotionally charged, don't ignore those feelings. Take a moment and say, okay, well, what is going on? Why do you feel like that? What is happening? And really start to be self-aware and be in tune and check in with yourself. And then lastly, you can do like I did and write a letter to your inner child. Let her know that you forgive her, that you love her, that you believe in her. Let her know about what's happening in life. Just have fun with it, okay? But these are just some practical things that you can do to start to mother your inner child. Of course, there's a plethora of things, but I just listed a few. And then I want you to just allow your feelings to just be whatever they are. Don't try to control and feel like you got to have everything figured out. Again, I'm going to keep saying it. This is your space to heal and grow. Don't force anything to be. Just allow it to be whatever it's going to become. And make sure you're using the soul writing prompts at the end of each section, so that way you're able to dig deeper on what I've been sharing with you. So I will see you in the final video.